On that day when fear seemed to dominate the hearts of Israel, an ordinary woman, living on the sidelines of great battles, became the protagonist of one of the most surprising acts in Scripture. Jael, wife of Heber the Kenite, was not a warrior, nor a prophetess, nor a leader of crowds. But it was she who, with courage and discernment, defeated Sisera, the feared commander of the Canaanite army, thus fulfilling Deborah's prophecy. Welcome to Bible in Colors, where stories come alive and gain meaning to inspire and transform your daily life. Today, you will dive into the journey of Jael, a symbol of bravery, cunning, and obedience, whose attitude changed the destiny of a nation and still echoes today as an invitation to courage and practical faith. Jael's story begins in a setting of war and oppression. For 20 years, Israel suffered under the rule of Jabin, king of Canaan, whose army was commanded by Sisera, a man feared for his cruelty and the power of his 900 iron chariots. The people lived in fear, villages were deserted, and hope seemed distant. Deborah, judge and prophetess, summoned Barak to lead the Israelite army, but prophesied that the final victory would not be his, but a woman's. While everyone's eyes were on the battlefield, Jael was preparing unknowingly for the moment when her courage would be put to the test. Jael's life was simple, marked by daily work, care for the tent, and hospitality, a fundamental virtue in ancient Middle Eastern cultures. She was a descendant of the Kenites, a nomadic people who maintained peaceful relations with both Israelites and Canaanites. Her tent was located on a travel route, a strategic place for travelers and fugitives. Jael did not seek prominence, but she was attentive to the movements around her, ready to act when the opportunity arose. The encounter between Jael and Sisera was unexpected. After the defeat in the Kishon Valley, Sisera fled on foot, seeking refuge. Exhausted and desperate, he arrived at Jael's tent, trusting in the peace alliance between his people and Heber's. Jael welcomed him, offered milk, covered him with a blanket, and assured him of safety. Sisera, feeling protected, fell asleep. Then Jael, guided by courage and discernment, took a tent peg and a hammer and defeated Israel's enemy, fulfilling Deborah's prophecy in a surprising and definitive way. Jael's attitude was not the result of impulse, but of keen perception and a sense of mission. She recognized the decisive moment and did not hesitate to act, even in the face of risk and the possibility of reprisals. Her courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face the challenge for a greater good. Jael became a symbol that God can use ordinary people in unlikely places to accomplish great deeds. Her story challenges each person to be attentive to opportunities to serve, protect, and act with justice, even when it requires stepping out of the comfort zone. Jael's narrative is an invitation to reflection. How many times do we find ourselves in situations where we need to act but hesitate out of fear or insecurity? In which areas of life are we called to be instruments of courage, protection, and justice? Jael teaches that it is not necessary to have titles or recognition to make a difference. It is enough to be available, attentive, and willing to act according to God's direction. If this introduction awakened in you the desire to learn more about Jael's courage and discernment, share this video with someone who needs inspiration. Write in the comments in which area of your life you feel you need to act more boldly, and subscribe to Bible in Colors so you won't miss the next episodes. Together, let's discover how the courage of one woman can transform stories and inspire new journeys of faith. Jael's story unfolds in a historical and cultural context full of nuances and challenges. We are in the time of the Judges, a period when Israel had no kings and each tribe lived relatively autonomously, often threatened by neighboring peoples and marked by cycles of oppression and deliverance. The setting is the mountainous region of northern Canaan near the Kishon Valley, a land of contrasts, arid hills, fertile fields, scattered villages, and caravan routes crossing the territory. The people of Israel, after conquering part of the Promised Land, faced the harsh reality of living with different cultures, fragile alliances, and constant attacks from powerful enemies. Jael was the wife of Heber the Kenite, a nomadic people descended from Hobab, Moses' father-in-law. The Kenites were known for their ability to live among different peoples, maintaining peaceful alliances with both Israelites and Canaanites. Heber had settled apart from the other Kenites, pitching his tent near Kadesh in the territory of Naphtali. This strategic location made Jael's tent a stopping point for travelers, merchants, and, as the story would show, war fugitives. Jael, like so many women of her time, was responsible for caring for the tent, hospitality, and family resource management. Her routine involved tasks such as fetching water, preparing food, weaving blankets, and welcoming visitors, always attentive to the movements around her. The biblical context presents Jael at a moment of great tension. Israel was under the yoke of Jabin, king of Canaan, who ruled from Hazor, a fortified city and symbol of military power. Sisera, his commander, was feared for his cruelty and the use of iron chariots, advanced technology for the time. For 20 years, the Israelites suffered oppression, seeing their crops plundered, their villages threatened, and their freedom restricted. It was in this scenario that Deborah, prophetess and judge, rose as a leader, summoning Barak to face the Canaanite army. Deborah's prophecy was clear: the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. This word echoed as both mystery and challenge, for in a patriarchal society, the idea of a woman being an instrument of deliverance was surprising. Jael was not an Israelite, but her story intertwines with God's people. Her tent, situated in neutral territory, was a symbol of hospitality, but also of vigilance and wisdom. Ancient Middle Eastern culture valued hospitality as a supreme virtue, and denying shelter to a stranger was seen as a grave offense. At the same time, survival required discernment, as alliances could change quickly, and the family's safety depended on the ability to read the signs of the times. Jael learned to be prudent, to observe in silence, and to act at the right moment. The geographic and social environment shaped Jael's decisions. The arid climate, distances between villages, presence of hostile tribes, and constant threat of violence made daily life an exercise in resilience. Women like Jael were trained to set up and take down tents, care for animals, manage scarce resources, and protect the family in case of danger. Physical strength and manual dexterity were essential, as it was their job to drive the tent pegs, a task that required precision and courage. Mastery of these skills would be decisive when Jael faced Sisera. Christian and Jewish tradition recognizes in Jael a figure of courage and discernment. She was not a formal leader, but her action changed the course of history. Her decision to welcome Sisera, offer him milk, cover him with a blanket, and then defeat him with firmness reveals not only boldness, but also a deep understanding of the context and consequences of her actions. Jael is remembered as a woman of action, capable of turning a risky situation into an opportunity for deliverance for an entire people. Jael's story raises relevant questions for today. How can we act with courage and discernment amid pressure and uncertainty? How can we be instruments of justice and protection, even when we do not hold prominent positions? Jael's example challenges each person to be attentive to opportunities to serve, to act wisely, and to trust that God can use anyone, anywhere, to accomplish his purposes. If this deep dive into Jael's historical and cultural context brought new insights to your life, share in the comments how you deal with difficult decisions and risky situations. Send this video to someone who needs inspiration to act with courage, and subscribe to Bible in Colors to follow the next episodes of this journey of faith and bravery. The day of the great turning point begins with distant sounds of battle echoing through the Kishon Valley. Jael, in her usual routine, senses the tension in the air. The sky is heavy, and the dust from fleeing troops mixes with the wind. She hears rumors that Sisera's army, once invincible, has been surprised and defeated by Israel under the leadership of Deborah and Barak. The unexpected unfolds before her eyes: scattered soldiers, abandoned iron chariots, and the heavy silence that remains after the storm of war. Jael feels that something extraordinary is about to happen, even without knowing exactly what. Amid the chaos, Sisera appears, exhausted and desperate, running toward Jael's tent. He is an imposing man with a dark beard, eyes marked by fear and exhaustion, wearing damaged armor and a cape soiled with dust. Sisera seeks refuge, confident in the old peace alliance between his people and the Kenites. Jael, seeing him approach, feels the weight of responsibility and the urgency to decide quickly. She welcomes him with hospitality, offering milk instead of water, a gesture that, in the culture of the time, symbolized care and special welcome. Covered by a blanket, Sisera feels safe and asks Jael to stand guard at the door in case someone comes looking for him. While Sisera sleeps, Jael watches in silence. The moment is full of tension. She knows she has before her the oppressor of Israel, the man whose cruelty terrorized villages and families for years. Deborah's prophecy echoes in her mind: the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. Jael understands that she was placed there at that exact moment to fulfill a greater purpose. With courage and precision, she takes a tent peg and a hammer, tools she had mastered since youth, and decisively defeats Sisera. The silence that follows is deep, almost sacred. Jael, still breathless, understands that her action has changed the course of history. Soon after, Barak arrives at the tent, following the tracks of the fleeing enemy. Jael goes out to meet him and firmly says, "Come, and I will show you the man you are looking for." Upon entering, Barak sees Sisera dead and understands that Deborah's prophecy has been fulfilled in an unexpected way. Amazement and respect mark Barak's gaze at Jael's courage. The news quickly spreads through the villages. It was not a warrior, but a woman in her tent who defeated Israel's greatest enemy. Jael becomes a symbol of courage, discernment, and action. Her attitude was not impulsive, but the result of attentive reading of the context, understanding of the moment, and willingness to act even in the face of risk. She did not seek personal glory, but responded to the call to protect her people and fulfill God's will. Deborah's song, sung soon after the victory, exalts Jael as blessed among women, recognizing her fundamental role in Israel's deliverance. Jael's story challenges each person to recognize the decisive moments in life, those when it is necessary to act with courage, even without guarantees or immediate recognition. She shows that God can use ordinary people in everyday situations to accomplish extraordinary deeds. Jael was neither a warrior nor a prophetess, but she was an instrument of justice and deliverance because she was attentive, available, and willing to act. If this chapter of Jael's life inspired you to face challenges with courage, share in the comments how you recognize and respond to decisive moments in your life. Send this video to someone who needs inspiration to act boldly, and subscribe to Bible in Colors to keep following stories that show the power of faith and courage in action. The impact of Jael's attitude quickly spreads through the villages of Israel. What began as a silent gesture inside a tent becomes a movement of hope, courage, and renewal for an entire people. Deborah, upon hearing of the unexpected victory, calls the people to celebrate not only the fall of an enemy, but God's faithfulness in fulfilling his promises in surprising ways. Deborah and Barak's song echoes among the tribes, exalting Jael as blessed among women, recognizing that her courage was an instrument of deliverance and justice. The scene of the song is marked by emotion and recognition. Deborah, with a firm voice and shining eyes, narrates the details of the battle, highlights the bravery of the leaders and the willingness of the people, but reserves special verses for Jael. She describes with poetry and strength the moment when Jael, a woman with steady hands and a determined heart, defeated the oppressor. The people, upon hearing the account, feel represented not only by the warriors on the battlefield, but also by those who, in silence and discretion, make a difference behind the scenes of history. Jael becomes a symbol that God sees every act of courage, even those that no one applauds. The public recognition of Jael is not just a tribute to her action, but an invitation for others to be willing to act when the opportunity arises. The people of Israel learn that deliverance does not depend only on great armies or charismatic leaders, but can come through ordinary people in unlikely places who decide to act with justice and faith. Deborah's song becomes a collective memory passed down from generation to generation, inspiring men and women to be instruments of transformation wherever they are. The emotional climax of this moment is profound. Jael, who could have chosen silence or neutrality, chose to act, even knowing the risks and possible consequences. Her courage does not eliminate fear, but overcomes it, showing that true strength is born from the willingness to serve a greater purpose. Jael's story challenges the logic of power, valuing silent courage, anonymous action, and faithfulness in the details. The celebration of victory is marked by dances, songs, and prayers of gratitude. The women of the villages look at Jael with admiration, recognizing in her someone who paved the way for new possibilities. The men, once skeptical about the female role in battle, now recognize that courage has no gender and that God can surprise by using those least expected. The people learn that God's justice is not limited to human standards, but is manifested where there is a willingness to obey and act in faith. Jael's legacy begins to be built at that moment. She becomes a reference for those facing challenges, for those who need to make difficult decisions, and for those who often feel invisible or underestimated. Her story is remembered at festivals, in conversations around campfires, in teachings passed on to children. Jael comes to be seen as an example that each person, in their simplicity, can be God's instrument to change destinies. If this moment of celebration and recognition touched your heart, share in the comments how you value the silent acts of courage in your life and in the lives of those around you. Send this video to someone who needs to be reminded that small actions can bring about great changes, and subscribe to Bible in Colors to keep following stories that inspire faith, courage, and transformation. Time passes, and Jael's story remains alive in the memory of the people of Israel, crossing generations as an example of courage, discernment, and obedience. Jael's fate after the episode with Sisera is not detailed in Scripture, but her name is immortalized in Deborah's song and in every account that celebrates God's victory through unlikely people. Jael did not seek recognition, but she became a reference for women and men who, in risky situations, chose to act with justice and faith. Her attitude, marked by simplicity and firmness, shows that true greatness lies in serving the divine purpose, even when this requires difficult and silent decisions. The people of Israel enter a time of peace after the victory over Sisera and Jabin. Villages become inhabited again, families resume their routines, and hope is restored. Deborah's song is repeated at festivals, ceremonies, and moments of gratitude, reminding everyone that deliverance came not only through the strength of armies, but through the courage of those who were attentive to God's call. Jael becomes a symbol that justice can be done behind the scenes, away from the spotlight, and that each person, in their reality, has a fundamental role in building a better world. Jael's legacy inspires new generations not to remain silent in the face of evil, to seek discernment in times of crisis, and to trust that God can act in unexpected ways. Her story is remembered in moments of decision, when fear threatens to paralyze and doubt seems greater than faith. Jael teaches that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it, trusting that the greater good will be achieved when one obeys God's voice. The central message of Jael's story is that no one is too small to be an instrument of transformation. God is not limited by titles, positions, or appearances. He sees the willing heart, the ready hand, and the mind attentive to the right time to act. Jael, a woman in a tent by the roadside, became a key piece in the divine plan because she did not hesitate when the moment came. Her life is an invitation for each person to recognize their value, trust in their mission, and be open to opportunities to serve, even if it means stepping out of anonymity to fulfill a greater purpose. The closing of this narrative arc reinforces that Israel's victory was collective, the result of the faith of many and the courage of a few who dared to believe in the impossible. Jael remains as a witness that God honors those who act with justice and humility, and that often the greatest miracles happen in the simplest places through people who simply say yes to the divine call. If the conclusion of Jael's story spoke to your heart, share in the comments which lesson most inspires your life and how you intend to apply this example to your daily challenges. Send this video to someone who needs courage and discernment, and subscribe to Bible in Colors to keep following stories that strengthen faith and inspire action. Jael's story, though set in a distant time, carries practical and profound lessons for contemporary life. Her journey shows that courage is not the privilege of a few, but a possible choice for all who decide to act in the face of fear and injustice. In daily life, we are often challenged to make difficult decisions, to face situations that seem bigger than our strength, and to protect those we love, even when it means stepping out of our comfort zone. Jael teaches that true bravery is born from attention to detail, a willingness to serve, and trust that God can work through ordinary people in extraordinary moments. Applying Jael's teachings today means being attentive to opportunities to do good, even when no one is watching. It is realizing that small actions, protective gestures, words of encouragement, or ethical choices can transform environments, restore hope, and inspire others to act justly. Jael invites us not to underestimate the power of silence, observation, and discreet action. Often, the greatest impacts happen away from the spotlight, when someone decides to be faithful to a greater purpose, even without immediate recognition. Another relevant aspect is discernment. Jael did not act on impulse, but with an understanding of the context and sensitivity to the right moment. In a world marked by haste, reactivity, and hasty judgments, learning from Jael is to cultivate the wisdom to wait, to analyze situations, and to act responsibly. Her story challenges the culture of immediacy, showing that the right timing can be decisive for a simple act to become a milestone of transformation. Jael's life also inspires overcoming limits imposed by social roles, prejudices, or external expectations. She was not a leader, warrior, or prophetess, but became the protagonist of a deliverance because she believed she could make a difference. In a society that often makes invisible or underestimates the potential of ordinary people, Jael is an invitation to self-confidence, skill development, and valuing each personal story. In the family, professional, or community environment, following Jael's example may mean protecting someone from injustice, supporting those in vulnerability, making ethical decisions even under pressure, or simply being available to serve where needed. Her discreet courage and readiness to act show that everyone can be an instrument of change, regardless of titles, positions, or public recognition. If Jael's story inspired your journey, share in the comments how you intend to apply these lessons in your routine. Send this video to someone who needs courage and discernment, and subscribe to Bible in Colors to keep receiving content that strengthens faith, justice, and the willingness to serve. Jael's story leads us to a deep dimension of spirituality, where courage, discernment, and faith intertwine in silence and prayer. Jael, a woman with steady hands and an attentive heart, did not stand out for speeches or titles, but for her willingness to listen and act at the right time. Her journey reveals that communion with God is not limited to great temples or public moments, but flourishes in daily life, in discreet gestures and silent decisions that shape destinies. At this moment, I invite you to take a moment to quiet your heart and reflect on Jael's courage. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and present to God the situations where you feel fear, insecurity, or doubt. Remember that the Lord knows every detail of your story, sees your silent struggles, and honors every step of faith, even when no one else notices. Just like Jael, who acted in secret, you can trust that God is attentive to your cry and ready to strengthen your hands and your heart. Pray with me, God of justice and courage. Just like Jael, we want to learn to hear your voice even in silence, to discern the right time to act, and to trust that you can use our hands to fulfill your purposes. Give us wisdom to wait, courage to face challenges, and humility to serve even without recognition. May we be instruments of protection, justice, and hope wherever we are. Renew our faith, strengthen our willingness to serve, and make us living witnesses of your love. May Jael's story inspire every heart to pray, act, and trust. Amen. If this prayer spoke to your heart, share your request or thanksgiving in the comments. Send this video to someone who needs silent courage, and subscribe to Bible in Colors to keep receiving content that feeds faith and inspires new journeys of prayer and trust in God. Jael's story reaches its climax in one of the most striking passages of the book of Judges, when Deborah and Barak sing a song of victory that immortalizes this woman's courageous deed. The biblical text in Judges 5:24-27 exalts Jael as most blessed of women, recognizing that her action was a direct instrument of justice and Israel's deliverance. The song describes with poetic detail the moment when Jael, using everyday tools, a tent peg and a hammer, defeated Sisera, the oppressor feared by all the people. Most blessed of women be Jael, the wife of Heber the Canite, most blessed of tent-dwelling women. He asked for water, and she gave him milk. In a bowl fit for nobles, she brought him curdled milk. Her hand reached for the tent peg, her right hand for the workman's hammer. She struck Sisera, she crushed his head, she shattered and pierced his temple. Judges 5:24-26. This passage reveals not only the power of feminine courage, but also God's ability to act through simple instruments and unlikely people. Jael was not a queen or a military leader, but an ordinary woman, accustomed to the desert routine, who was willing to act when the moment required. The song emphasizes that Israel's victory did not come only through military might, but through someone's willingness to serve with what was in her hands. Theologically, Jael's story points to God's sovereignty, who uses those who are available regardless of titles, status, or social recognition. The contrast between Sisera, a powerful commander, and Jael, a woman of a tent, highlights that true power lies in obedience and readiness to act according to divine direction. The biblical text does not romanticize violence, but emphasizes justice and the deliverance of an oppressed people, showing that in extreme times, God can act in surprising ways. In today's context, this passage challenges each person to recognize the value of small actions and the importance of being attentive to opportunities to serve and protect. How often, in difficult situations, do we underestimate the power of what we have in our hands or feel incapable of making a difference? Jael teaches that with courage, discernment, and faith, it is possible to change destinies, even when everything seems unlikely. This rereading of the passage invites gratitude, the celebration of silent victories, and the recognition that God continues to work behind the scenes of history. Deborah and Barak's song is, at the same time, praise, memory, and inspiration for new generations not to remain silent in the face of injustice and to be ready to act when the moment comes. If this interpretation of the biblical passage about Jael brought light to your journey, share in the comments how you have experienced courage and discernment in challenging situations. Send this video to someone who needs to be reminded that God can use anyone to fulfill his purposes, and subscribe to Bible in Colors to keep deepening your faith and understanding of the scriptures. Jael's journey is an invitation for deep reflection on each person's role in fulfilling greater purposes, even when circumstances seem adverse or recognition is unlikely. Her story shows that courage, discernment, and readiness can transform risky situations into opportunities for deliverance and justice. Jael was not a leader, had no titles or position of prominence, but was able to act at the right moment, using the resources she had, and became a symbol of bravery and quiet obedience. In today's world, following Jael's example means being attentive to the needs around us, recognizing opportunities to serve, and acting ethically and responsibly, even when no one is watching. Jael's courage challenges each person not to remain silent in the face of evil, not to wait for others to take the initiative, and to trust that small actions can bring about great changes. Her story inspires us to seek discernment in times of doubt, to act firmly even in the face of fear, and to value the silent gestures of protection and justice. Living like Jael also means learning to deal with the pressure of external expectations, social roles, and the judgments of others. She was not paralyzed by fear of making mistakes or by the possibility of reprisals, but trusted that God was present in every detail and that her attitude would make a difference for an entire people. In times of uncertainty, Jael teaches that true strength is not in appearance or recognition, but in the willingness to obey God's voice and serve with humility. In daily life, applying Jael's lessons may mean protecting someone from injustice, supporting those who are vulnerable, making ethical decisions even under pressure, or simply being a welcoming and hopeful presence for those going through difficult times. Her discreet courage and readiness to act show that everyone can be an instrument of transformation, regardless of titles, positions, or visibility. If you feel it is time to act with more courage and discernment, share in the comments how Jael's story inspires your journey. Send this video to someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to Bible in Colors to keep receiving content that strengthens faith, justice, and the willingness to serve. We have reached the end of the journey through Jael's life, a woman whose quiet courage and discernment transformed not only Israel's destiny, but also the meaning of bravery and service. Her story reminds us that great deeds can be born from simple gestures, that justice can be done behind the scenes, and that God values the willingness to act even without recognition. Jael remains a symbol that anyone, regardless of titles or position, can be an instrument of transformation when attentive to the call of the moment and willing to serve with humility and firmness. Jael's legacy inspires all who face difficult situations, who need to make risky decisions, or who often feel invisible. Her journey shows that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it, trusting that the greater good will be achieved when one obeys God's voice. Jael teaches that there are no limits for those who wish to serve, protect, and do justice, and that every small gesture can be a seed of hope and deliverance for many. If this series about Jael touched your heart, share in the comments which moment impacted your life the most and how you intend to apply these lessons in your daily life. Send this video to someone who needs renewed courage, and subscribe to Bible in Colors so you don't miss the next episodes. In the next video, we will dive into the story of Deborah, another woman of faith, leadership, and inspiration who showed how obedience and trust can transform generations. Don't miss this new journey of faith and transformation.